This video I'm going to show you how the if statement in Excel works. Now what does the if statement do exactly? Well, you're using the if statement to distinguish between two different outcomes of a cell. For example, I might want to have the text pass or fail. And whether I get the text pass or fail is determined by a logical test. Let's say I have a test score, and if the test score is at least 60, then I want to have the text pass, and if not, I want to have the text fail. So this logical statement is either true or false. If the statement is true, then this will be the outcome. If the statement is false, then this will be the outcome. And because the logical statement has to be either true or false, it often, not always, but often has a greater than sign, an equal sign, or a less than sign. I'm going to open up Excel and show you 4 examples. My first example is this one. I have a test score, and depending on the test score, I want to have the text pass or fail in this cell. I'm going to type the if function equals if, then my logical test, and this is often a comparison between two cells or a cell and a number. In this case, the score has to be greater than or equal to 60, comma, and if this is true, I want to have the text pass. Now, because pass is a text, I have to type it between double quotation marks, comma, and if my score is not at least 60, I want to have the text fail, and also the text fail has to be between double quotation marks and close parentheses. So if A2 is greater than or equal to 60, then I get the text pass, or else I will get the text fail. Enter. And I get the text fail because my score is below 60. Now let's test it. If I type 60, enter, I get the text pass. Now in my second example, I want to have an interest rate, either 2% or 7%, but I want my interest rate to be dependent on the balance. If the balance is positive, I want to have an interest rate of 2%, and if it is a negative balance, I want to have an interest rate of 7%. So again, I'm going to type the if function. First, my logical test. If the balance is greater than or equal to 0, then, comma, I want to have an interest rate of 2%, comma, and if not, if A2 is not greater than or equal to 0, so it's a negative number. If it is a negative number, then I want to have 7%. And because 2% and 7% are numbers and not texts, I don't type them between quotation marks. Close parentheses, enter. So now I get 2% because my balance is a positive number. If my balance equals 0, enter, I still get 2%. If my balance is negative, for example, minus 50, then I get 7%. In my third example, I want to have 2 VAT rates. Many countries have 2 VAT rates, a high rate and a low rate. Now let's say the low rate is 7% and the high rate is 19%. I want to have the rate here dependent on the text, which is in A8. So again, I'm going to type the if function, and then my logical test, which is A8 equals the text low, but because low is a text, I have to type it between double quotation marks, comma. If A8 contains the text low, I want to have 7% as the VAT rate, comma, and if A8 does not contain the text low, I want to have the VAT rate of 19%. And close parentheses, enter. Now if I type high, enter, I get 19%. But one note though, if A8 contains the text low, I get 7%, but if A8 contains anything else but the text low, I get the rate 19%. So even if I type the text ABC, enter, I get a VAT rate of 19%. Only if I type the text low, then I will get the VAT rate of 7%. In my last example, I want to have some kind of warning. I want to have an exclamation mark if the current revenue is lower than the previous revenue. But if the current revenue is at least as high as the previous revenue, I want this cell to be empty. I'm going to type my if function again. If, then my logical test. If my current revenue is less than my previous revenue, comma. If this is the case, I want an exclamation mark, and because an exclamation mark is a text, I have to type it between double quotes. So double quotes, exclamation mark, and again double quotes. If this is the case, I get an exclamation mark, comma. But if my current revenue is bigger than the previous one, I want nothing to happen. I want an empty cell. So what do I do now? Do I just leave this part of the formula empty? No, what you do is you type an empty text. And you type an empty text by typing 2 double quotation marks without anything in between. So now I either get an exclamation mark or an empty text. Close parentheses, enter. Because my current revenue is lower than the previous one, I get an exclamation mark. Now let's see what happens if I type exactly the same number as the previous 900, I get an empty cell. If I type $1,000, this cell is also empty. Only if I type an amount which is smaller than 900, then I get an exclamation mark. So hopefully you now understand how the if function works. You've seen that this is a very useful function, and therefore it is one of the most used functions in Excel.